sort of preferential, so concentrated efforts support for mobile area is needed. Leveraging with the platform service providers. So this is target we wanted to achieve. And so project, what we need to do to achieve this target.
Excellent. Okay, so the first part, I will cover some of it. So if duplicate, maybe if you skip, but if there's anything that I didn't cover, you can cover it. And so especially helpful on your political perspective and the strategy. And then the general deployment part, maybe I will cover anyways, but then if there's anything that I've missed, then please feel free to add.
Okay. So usually, can I?
Sorry?
Are you familiar with the push strategy and pull strategy? Push strategy is something like push strategy is something like you do it push strategy is something strategy that you take with incentive like provide IPv6 cheap price or passive exemption. So our government strategy was push strategy, but now we change the strategy to pull strategy. Pull is we use
force them to do it.
Pull strategy.
There is no incentive, but now you have to do it.
And leveraging with the platform service provider.
Excellent point. Okay.
But I'm just wondering if I bring up this, so you think it's...
Sure, you should.
The last part, we'll cover one of the things that governments and other people can do. So,
Yes, just keep it to the last part.
No problems. Introduce it, but then we'll have more discussion. So, very good. So that is a very
So
good
you
point.
probably can ask regulators' perspective and how to encourage people to get into this.
Yes,
And
without
then you can
too much regulation, but then accommodating. Excellent point. So very helpful. So shall we get started? I think it's almost past. So let's start.
Yes, 5 minutes past.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session on national policies and business strategies on IPv6. So please start taking a seat and getting settled. I really appreciate everyone for attending this session from early in the morning, and while it might sound a bit more technical than other sessions, and for taking an interest on this topic. So my name is Izumi Okutani from APrIGF, and I'm also serving as an executive council member of APrIGF. I'm co-moderating this session with Aftab Siddiqui from the ISOC. So you might feel that this topic of IPv6 is a bit more technical than some of the other sessions covered during APrIGF, but you don't have to worry about having a technical expertise on IPv6, because the focus of our session is on policies and strategies. And so we'd like to have discussions in 3 parts. The first part is more like scene setting and sharing the basic environment, the current situation around IPv6 deployment. The second part, we will hear from our panelists here, their perspectives and observations about IPv6 and what may be the helpful way forward in encouraging deployment. And the last part, we'll have our discussions together with you. So we want to make this session very interactive. So I already see quite a number of familiar faces, but I'd like to see how many of you are familiar with what IPv6 is. Can you raise your hands if you know? Okay, it seems that most people know, so I don't have to cover too much into the details. But just in short, for the record, So IP address is like a technical identifier for the devices to be connected to the global internet, like phone numbers for telephones. And the version of IP address that we have been using since the start of the internet is called IP version 4. However, this has run out of newly available stocks to be distributed since 2011. And we still have this new version called IP version 6, which we don't have to worry about the exhaustion. But there are actions needed for the devices or all the services to be IPv6 supported. So make sure that you're able to connect to the internet using IPv6 address or access to a website using IPv6 address. So that's what the issue is about. And so why is this relevant to internet governance? Is that it's related to the issue of access and accommodating growth of the internet. So making sure that we're accommodating new users, new players to the internet who may not be able to receive IPv4 address, but be able to be connected using IPv6, just the same ways that the users of IPv4 address is able to do, and then keep on accommodating the growth of the internet. So that's what the context of this topic on the internet governance. And so I'd like to start sharing what are the work that has been done in the global IGF. So I'd like to start showing the slides. And then all of this work in the global IGF has started since 2015. We started the Best Practices Forum on IPv6 there, exactly under the context that I've described earlier. And then what's interesting is that we've had a session on IPv6 last year at APrIGF, and then we brought the feedback that was discussed there again back to the global IGF, and now we're back here. So it's like global input shared in AP perspective, provide feedback to the global IGF. So a good cycle and collaboration between the global discussions and the regional discussions. And I'd like to share some of the key points that was highlighted in the work that was done in the global IGF in this presentation. I can't remember where I put the... oh, I think it's right in front of Thank you. Yeah, so this is the session that we had in Guadalajara, Mexico, in Global IGF in December last year. And if you're interested to see, observe the discussions, there's YouTube video available, so you can take a look from the link over here. Why IPv6 at IGF? I think I've explained quite a bit of it. But the key here is that to encourage deployment of IPv6, you can't just do it by an effort of a single organization. I mean, you can do it on your own, but then to make it truly effective and raise the deployment rate worldwide, you really need a collaborative effort within your country by different players in the industry, as well as make sure that different economies, countries in the world deploy IPv6. So at the point in December last year of V6 work at IGF, the overall deployment rate of IPv6 was just little less than 8%. This has really grown since then, so it's now 15%, so it's almost a double within half year, which is quite impressive pace. But still, overall 15% is not necessarily really high, so there's still room for doing more work. So what work did we do in the Best Practices Forum? So myself and also Sumon Ahmed Sabir from Bangladesh, we have served as the organ coordinators on this topic. And this was very much open community effort. Anyone was able to join the mailing list for discussions, regular telephone conferences. And as a result of that, we have compiled the document on best practices on IPv6, which is available on the IGF website. So it's on the UN IGF website, this output of this document. So you can take a look if you're interested to look into it in further details. And one of the things that we did was we collected case studies, 20 case studies from different parts of the world. And also the US government, NTIA, an agency within the US government, has helped us compile the cases from the US as well, from Microsoft, AT&T, and a few others. And some of the examples are categorized per industry players is, for example, for content, KakaoTalk from Korea, UOL Divio from Brazil. For fixed line, within our region, TMNet from Malaysia, FPT from Vietnam has helped us share the cases. In the area of mobile, SK Telecom from Korea, T-Mobile from US. So I won't go into the whole list, but you can really see that there are various industry players contributing in sharing their cases from different parts of the world. And I do want to highlight, it's not just the internet companies who have shared these cases, but banking and security, Wells Fargo and Rabobank have also shared their cases, and corporate network, Sony has shared their cases as well. So again, this is all published, so you can take a look and see what they've done and what are the incentives that they've seen if you're interested. And then what's notable about V6 deployment rate is that this is the top 20 countries at the point in December last year of the V6 deployment rate, that it's not only the developed countries that has a high deployment rate, so there's no correlation with GDP. So the countries highlighted in red, Greece, Peru, Ecuador, Trinidad, and Tobago. They're not necessarily the developed countries, but they are ranked within top 20 countries with high deployment rate. And this ranking and the percentage is a bit old because it was 6 months ago at the point of IGF work. So now India is within top 10 with, I think, almost 50% deployment rate. It's very, very impressive. Please take a look at the actual link that is shown here for the latest figures. But as I said, the key is that you don't have to feel, hey, I'm not a developed countries and we can't do V6 deployment. This is not the case. And then another notable development since last year is that in the area of software development and equipment vendors, there has been two notable announcements. One by Apple, that they've required all the software developers that want to put their applications in the App Store, they are required to support V6 native since June last year. So that they will have to make sure that any of the softwares that is developed for mobile to put into Apple should support V6 natively. Another thing is IAB. It's a body within a standardization community called the IETF. They have announced that it's no longer a must for vendors to support IPv4, which they consider as more of a legacy technology, but then still continue to make it a requirement for any of the protocols to be developed to support IPv6. So in short, there's more focus on vendors and software developers to support V6 than V4. In the area of mobile, there's rapid growth observed. It's quite amazing. I think Apple announcement must have made some influence. So large-scale native IPv6 deployment in the US, such as T-Mobile, Verizon Wireless, which are over 70% of their traffic in IPv6. If we look at our region, the Asia-Pacific region, Reliance Jio from India, again, over 70%, and they have really boosted up the overall deployment rate in India. SK Telecom from Korea, They are also supporting V6 commercial service. And another notable development within Japan is that our ministry has published a report setting milestone for Japanese mobile operators provide IPv6 service by default by 2017. And we actually have a speaker from SoftBank here today who will be sharing his experience. So, and then with all these developments, if you actually look at the end user development environment, even without yourself as end user being conscious, the environment is getting very ready. So, for example, look at major global contents. Google, YouTube, Facebook, Wikipedia, LinkedIn, all these like websites that you see regularly is already V6 supported. Major cloud or CDN players also support IPv6. So they are the ones who make sure that the contents can be viewed very smoothly. So Cloudflare, Akamai, Microsoft Azure, Amazon, AWS, they all support IPv6 by default. And I think Akamai has observed that 50% of their mobile traffic is already accessed using IPv6. So this is really rising up. Latest operation system is supporting V6, blah, blah, blah. So if an ISP turns on V6 by default, you can expect to see a substantial volume of traffic accessing via IPv6. And this is another like projection of IPv6 enabled web browsers, courtesy by Google. That today in like December last year, it was 15% in total, was expected to be about 20% by the end of 2017, by the end of this year. But we have already reached 20% at this point, and then by the end of 2019, expected to be around 35%. On the other hand, there are still areas which needs more work. One is the area of access line. Preparing ISP's infrastructure is not that difficult, but then the last mile between ISP's infrastructure and end user part, this might be an area that may be causing some challenges. Contents, top Alexia website, I think it's already 20%, top 1,000 Alexia website, about 20% is V6 reachable, but the rest of 70% is still not. And more work needed in making local content available and support IPv6. There's sporadic support in data centers and IXP's internet exchange points, which are the core of providing infrastructure. So this part also needs more support. Common deployment challenges. I won't go too much into details here, but these are also like listed, and a lot of it was actually a part of the input by APrIGF last year. So thanks to you. So takeaways for policymakers. What are the actions that they can do? I think one of the things that they can do is request vendors to support IPv6. This was one thing which was strongly recommended by Microsoft in their input, that government should require vendors to, as a part of their, to require vendors to support IPv6. Awareness raising to consumers that they make sure they buy equipment that is V6 supported, especially when they buy home routers. Outreach to key decision makers in the industry and things like that. So there are things that policymakers can do. And then takeaway for business decision makers is that whenever you upgrade your equipment or buy a new equipment, make sure that out of different choices, choose the product that supports IPv6. By doing that, without making additional investment just for IPv6, as a part of your equipment upgrade, your network will start getting IPv6 ready. So this is very cost efficient. And when you deploy IPv6 commercially, turn it on by default. Some of the ISPs make it optional that customers have to request for IPv6 service, but end users are not going to say, I want IPv6 service explicitly. So make sure that you don't make it opt-in, make it provide the service by default. and vendors to have your product support IPv6. So key message of our best practices document is that consider IPv6 for long-term business strategy. I mean, IPv4 is not sustainable. It's already run out of new stocks. And so make sure that you have your network and service ready for this coming protocol, IP version 6. And then a couple of years ago, IPv6 was more like, I mean, theoretically it might happen, but it's more like theory and not happening so much in reality. So it was more like an insurance just in case. But as you can see from my updates, it is really happening rapidly, especially in the area of mobile. So you really want to adjust to the reality today, not for a hypothetical situation. So let's just, you know, each do our part to prepare for the situation. So that's the key message of a document on IPv6 in the global IGF. Thank you very much. So should we move on to the second part? So you will be moderating, right?
Hi, thank you, Zumi, for the great insight in what's happening and what we are looking at. I'm Aftab Siddiqui. I'm from Internet Society. So we have the panel here with me is Billy June from KISA, and can you introduce yourself on the mic as well, please? Him as well.
Hello, my name is Suwon Lee in Kisa. I'm from Korea.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, and then we have Koji from SoftBank.
Yep.
Yes, and we are missing two panelists. Hopefully, they'll be here in a short while. So, well, it's more of a open discussion. We'll try to get as much information as we can. But if you think you want to ask some question, please don't feel free to ask any question. There are two mics here. So, well, we have, yes. We haven't started yet, and we have a question on the floor. No, go ahead. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, gearing up for the question. Well, that's the spirit. That's the spirit. Yeah. Yeah, no shouting today. Well, yeah. So let's start from the, I would say, from the regulator's perspective. We have KESA, and let me give some brief overview what's happening. And it's as Izumi shared a slide which says that in Asia Pacific, specifically, India is on top at the moment just because of an operator, and the rest of the top 10 only have less than 10% deployment. And India is on top with 40-odd% deployment. And the difference is huge. So let me ask Billy that what's happening? What's not working from the regulator side and what's not working from the operator side? So how is the situation in Korea?
Thank you, Aftab. Well, I don't know all the case in the other countries, but I would like to share my KISA observation and government strategy for the IPv6 deployment. I'm with the KISA. KISA is as quasi-government organization. IPv6 has been quite important topic. With the fourth industrial revolution as infrastructure to develop local internet industry in Korea, and also globally also important to connect the unconnected. Everyone knows that. And for this, KISA with the Korean government set a plan for IPv6 deployment. We actually studied the global IPv6 deployment trend from multifaceted perspective. First, network perspective. Second, service perspective. And third, user perspective. And we studied these perspective from these perspective, global IPv6 deployment trends. And the major finding in network perspective was, according to the data from Akamai, top 10 countries with a high IPv6 deployment rate are Belgium, Greece, Switzerland, Germany, and the States. In these countries, we noted that major ISPs possess 70% of national traffic, and they are supporting IPv6 end-to-end networking. And from service perspective, 16 out of 100 world popular websites supports IPv6. For example, Google, Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn, YouTube, and these websites support IPv6. And especially in mobile apps, Apple also mandated to support IPv6 in registering and updating apps on iOS platform, App Store, as of June 1st, 2016. And user perspective, according to Google data, global IPv6 usage percentage was just 0.27% in 2011, which was IPv6 exhaustion period. But this increased to 15.14% in 2016. This is 56% in 5 years. So in comparison with these global trends, we also looked at local status of IPv6. Same again. In network perspective, IPv6 in Korea, IPv6 adoption was very slow, especially in fixed line. And also IPv6 communication was very poor between backbone ISPs. But one thing notable is that mobile carrier were very active in IPv6 deployment because I think there's many reasons why we have to deploy, adopt IPv6, but I think main reason is that they just need more IP address to cater new customers. So as Izumi just mentioned, yes, SKT commercialized the IPv6 in 2014, and then KT, LG, U+ also deployed the V6 in their LTE networks in 2 years later. And also service perspective, about 1,000 out of 3.4 million domains in Korea, which is equivalent to 0.03% in domains in Korea support IPv6. And content providers also, such as Daum and Naver, these content providers also support IPv6 in part of their services. And so with this, our major observation is that from overseas case in network and user perspective, as a pace setter, multinational companies, including major telcos, mobile carriers, are driving IPv6 deployment. And the service perspective, global service providers such as Google, Facebook, and also platform service providers are driving IPv6 deployment through App Store and content delivery networks. So, and local status, after looking at local status, mobile carriers are driving IPv6 deployment, and V6 deployment in fixed line backbone networks was so slow. So we reached the conclusion that probably we need to focus on mobile area first. So, preferential IPv6 deployment for mobile area is needed first, possibly leveraging with the platform service providers. So with in so we actually set up this IPv6 deployment strategy with the Korean government in the first half of this year. And the major target in the strategy is to raise IPv6 usage to 10.4%, which is the average figure of 35 OECD countries, and enter into 20 countries with a high IPv6 adoption rate by Google measure. Second target we set up is to put IPv6 traffic exchange between local backbone ISPs and this is to foster IPv6 service-ready environment with mobile services. So, should I stop here for the? Okay.
Thanks, Billy, for the update from Korea. So now, if you have any question, please feel free to ask because we have some information as well from Kisa coming out. And as Billy said, so it's pretty logical for a telecom operator or mobile operator to push for IPv6, and this is what's happening in Korea. If you check the stats, one of the biggest telecom operator is providing the IPv6 services and making an impact in Korea as well. So now we have Koji from SoftBank. Again, they are one of the top 5 IPv6 provider in Japan. Like the Japan percentage is really very good in the region. So let's hear from him that what encouraged his company to deploy IPv6 and where are they heading now?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Koji Yasukagawa from SoftBank. SoftBank is one of the mobile company, totally the telecommunication company in Japan. So I would like to talk to you about the IPv6 development experience in the mobile network in Japan. So I'm in charge of the conducting for the IPv6 in the mobile network. Thank you. So I prepared the document, so I would like to talk about based on the decks. So firstly, I'd like to talk about the mobile situation in Japan. So in Japan, I have to talk about one thing, the important things. SoftBank is named inside the bank, but we are not a financial bank. So this is just a telecom company. But so I talked about the mobile situation in Japan. So in Japan, there are 3 major telecom carriers. It's one of the NTT Docomo. Second one is KDDI. Last one is SoftBank. So totally, Japan has 3 mobile company, and we providing the customers and providing for the MVNO also. And in Japan, the diffusion rate, currently we have 128%. So this is only the cellular mobile phone. So this is except the WiMAX, or we call the wireless broadband. So this is to focus on only the mobile cellular network. Why I'm here? So we talk about the. So 3 mobile operator. One of 2 mobile operator launched the IPv6 service as a default, and another one service telecom company will provide the IPv6 as a default. So firstly, until 2016, so 3 mobile operator provided IPv4 service only as a default. So, and some people, some customers want to use the IPv6. So that customer have to order to use the IPv6 in that situation. But so actually, we discussed in the government committee, and actually the Japanese government, as a administration of the information and the communications, and encourage using the IPv6 and installment IPv6. And so another aspect, so actually the mobile operator aspect, the point of view, so we provide the LTE and we provide the VoLTE, VoLTE. It's a voice service on the LTE. Actually, this is the based on the IPv6 network. So this situation makes us the occasion to join the IPv6 world. So right now, SoftBank has provide the IPv6 as a default, so the customers use IPv6 without a contract. Next slide, so we are talking about the timeline. It's a launching. Actually, the SoftBank will provide the IPv6 as a default since 2016 June, and right now, last month, NTT Docomo has provided IPv6 as well. Another one, KDDI, will provide IPv6 as a default until, by 2018. So we addressed this commitment in the government committee and announcement for the internet world. So actually, currently the SoftBank has launched the mobile handset over 20 model, which is based on the IPv6. So I'd like to next to talk about the differences of the IP address assignment. On the IPv4, the handset of customers used IPv4 address, but this is only the private IPv4, not global. So every handset have to through that NAT to change the IPv4 global IPv4 address. But so currently IPv6, as you know, the IPv6 no need. The IPv6 have lots of the address range, so we don't need to change between the private and the global. So we provide the global IPv6 address for handset. Actually, this is two routes. The customer's point of view. When customer reach the website via IPv4, this is through NAT. But if it's even the Google or YouTube or Facebook like that, so if customers reach the IPv6 website, it can be reached global directly without NAT. This is totally different from mobile carrier's point of view. But another thing, though, we need to talk about the global address. IP address is a risk. actually the private IP address are protected from the global internet network naturally, because of is it not? But IPv6 network is a global network until the handset. So I think this is one of the risks. We cannot describe the size of the risk, but actually this is risk. And this is what we are sticking point on our launch IPv6. Actually, we need to change the network. Why we couldn't change the IPv6 network from IPv4 network until last year? So we need to change the network, and we need to investment as double. So because we need to provide the IPv4 network and the IPv6 network also. And we need to develop we need to change the way of the handset, information system, and the education for the shop staff and the call center also, because sometimes the customer might ask them about the IPv6 access. And so this is one of big issue. This was one of big issues. It's reliability when roaming out. So we need to ensure the availability for the customer when customer go overseas. And yeah, actually this is benefit. I'm talking about the benefit of the IPv6. IPv4, you know that the IPv4 has the limitation of the address range, address size. We need split the network actually, but on the IPv6 has lots of huge address range, so we can have only one network. This is good point for the cost efficient. This is last slide, our goals. Currently, a customer access by IPv4 and IPv6 as well is a parity. But finally, mobile operator, at least the Japanese mobile operator, think about we want to access via only IPv6 finally, because we told you about the network split and the double investment. We have two both network currently, but so in the only the IPv6 world, so we have only one network. This is a good point for the mobile carrier and customer as well, because it's just simple. So migration of the contents to IPv6 is important to increase IPv6 usage and efficient cost management. This is what I want to say that today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Koji. And this is what we were. This is the most important point which he shared in the last slide. If you hang between V4 and V6, it's the user experience. It's not going to be a very good one. So if you make a decision that okay, fine, let's go with the V6, well, then you can actually measure the actual user experience, right? So and well, there are multiple measurements people have done. Even Jeff Houston from APrIGF, he has done multiple measurements showing that when IPv6 is faster than V4 and when it is not. And the problem is because the deployment is in silos. It breaks. Sometimes it breaks the internet just because everybody else is not using it. So it's just like a chicken and egg situation. Sometimes say the content is available, the connectivity is not. So right now, as Zumi initially shared in her slide, like content is available on V6. So the chicken is there, it's only the egg. So it's your, if it's not connectivity, if the connectivity is not there, well, that's your problem. And so again, I would like to hear from Billy, from a regulator's perspective, that how they are encouraging the service provider and the telecom operators to deploy more and more V6.
Regulators' perspective, I think the IPv6 deployment should be driven by private sector, but in case of Korea, the government was the main body to drive IPv6, but I think it didn't work well. So we changed actually our strategy to encourage people, encourage industry to adopt IPv6. We have been using push strategy with direct incentives with such as tax redemption, providing IPv6 at cheaper cost, but it didn't work out well. So the strategy that I just mentioned, this time we are using pull strategy, leveraging with platform service providers, and leave most of part in private sector, and government is going to support IPv6 deployment at the minimum level. That's what we are doing. Thank you.
So, go away.
Well, I think Billy's answer is answer very well to your question. I don't think the government lead the policy of the IPv6 is the wrong way. It's not the right way at all. I think for the people in the Asia Pacific, I think Izumi or Billy, you know that. For a long time in the Asia Pacific, we have a so-called IPv6 summit. IPv6 summit. And what is the IPv6 summit? All the money actually from the government. No matter Korea, Taiwan, even in Japan, the Isaki is running it. All the money from government, and what they are doing, they are not really solving the IPv6. They are looking for a killer app. They spend all the money into the killer app. How long? I think more than 8 years. Done nothing. They really actually make the IPv6 flying. I think it's the two major situation or scenario is happens. I think for the people in this area, you know that. First of all, is because the IPv6 day is launched. I think that is back to maybe 2009 or 2010. Who launched that? Basically, it's a content provider. The major content provider put the IPv6 available, accessible. I think the second goal you have to happy about that is the IPv6 actually not come from computer, actually from mobile. If we still living in the computer age, I think the IPv6 we need to wait even longer. And mobile really make the IPv6 happen because everybody have a mobile. Mobile is the number of the mobile phone is much more than the computer or notebook we have. And particularly, we know that all the mobile system, no matter it's Apple, Android, or Microsoft, they put the IPv6 much earlier. It's workable in your mobile. So for these two issues, I think that is a make the IPv6 actually happen this day. And what I say is that you don't need a national policy. The reason I'm saying that, if any telco, any ISP, they don't implement IPv6, just like Izumi present, by end of the year, if the IPv6 traffic up to the 35%, for those of people not moving to the IPv6 ISP or telco, bye-bye. You are losing your customer. You are losing your user. Who want to access the internet with only 65%? Once go to the 35%, you will see much faster the IPv6 go to the 45, 50, 60, and eventually nobody want to buy the IPv4 address anymore. Right now, IPv4 address is a $12 per address. So if you have an IPv4 address, you should sell it as soon as possible to cash out. You know, so I don't think we have to spend a lot of time to convince the government to do anything. You know, the telco or the ISP, they have to be survived. I think one of the couple of the questions is more important. I think one of that is SoftBank raised that. I think some of the ISP and telco, they don't know how to implement the IPv6. The problem is, just like you say, a lot of people, because they are using the NAT to provide a private address to the user. When they move to the IPv6, they don't know how to take care of the NAT. You know? So they keep asking one simple question. Should I still put a NAT in front of IPv6? I think that's maybe we need to more explore to the newcomer, the new ISP telco people want to go into the IPv6. Don't put the NAT in between the internet and the user.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ko-Wei. I think you've made a very realistic observation on the reason and the factors which pushed IPv6 deployment. It's basically the pushing factor was the private sector have actually went ahead with the deployment. And then another point that they've highlighted is that don't use NAT. So I think I really agree with both. And I also agree that you know, based on my observation, that a particular like legislation or something as strong as policy may be really difficult to, you know, implement it in an effective way. At the same time, you know, I think the situation, for example, in the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific may be slightly different. So I just want to share like a situation in Japan. What was the extent of government involvement there? So, you know, compared to many of the US companies, or maybe some of the European companies who are genuinely motivated on private sector level, hey, we have to get this going. I don't know. The motivation was not as high on private sector initiative. So the engineers knew that this was needed, but it was really difficult to make business case and convince the top level people. So what happened was two things. One was very much community-based initiative. So we set up a task force among like different key internet groups within Japan. What should we do? Let's set a milestone as industry. And another thing is MIC has gathered a study group inviting academics and the key business decision makers and discussing what to do. So MIC it wasn't MIC who actually told the industry what to do, but through the industry players themselves discussing what should be done. And because the business executives were there, they thought, okay, we have to do something about it. And it was published as a report as well. So it was like helpful as a pushing factor. Another thing is that, you know, the part that you mentioned about the NAT, that, you know, you should try to encourage ISPs not to use NAT so much, especially with additional costs, and it's really difficult to reverse it once implemented. Again, I think there's a role that government can play in sharing information and not like regulating or anything, just sharing information. This could be the implications, and then leave the decision up to the ISPs. I don't know if Koji has anything to add from the perspective of mobile, because this is exactly what the MIC did in the area of mobile. So do you have anything to add? And if you want, maybe you can speak in Japanese, and I'd be happy to translate as well. But you can also speak in English, whatever works for you.
Yeah, actually, this is my opinion, but I think actually the government encouraged us about introducing the IPv6 actually, but so our network had IPv6 already, because the VoLTE is a voice service, the calling service on the LTE. We need to prepare the IPv6 because based on the standardization standard. So actually, when the MIC held the committee as a study group, so we already have the IPv6 network as a portion, not completely, yeah. Well, the government encouraged us about introducing the IPv6 because the government is looking for the IoT. It's like one of buzzword right now. But yeah, actually the government is looking for the IoT network. What is the network is efficiently. That's what one of the answer is IPv6. So the government encouraged. So these are the circumstances make us to introduce the IPv6.
Thank you. So I guess in short, it's like private sector was motivated, but also government encouraged and pushed. Oh, thank you.
Well, let me try to put into the small circle. I'm not talking about IoT. IoT is another issue, okay?
Okay, sorry.
First of all, I think what is the government can do? You know, we all in Asia, we know that. The government is quite bureaucratic. And the government usually is they don't know the market trend better than private sector. And they don't know what is the difficulty of the private sector. I think the SoftBank actually is telling very true for every telco. The real problem. I'm the board member of the Zhonghua Telecom. I know the problem too, you know. Because if you ask them to run the IPv4, IPv6, extra charge, extra cost, but no extra income. I think the SoftBank understand very well. So what I say, why the government should not hand in. If they lose the money, are you going to pay them? So the decision have to make by private sector itself. I agree, the government, well, I don't think government can share the information. I think it's much better for APrIGF, or for example, the successful one, the successful story from SoftBank or Verizon or T-Mobile, sharing to the mobile company or telco company or ISP company. Because they trust them. They know them, they know how they will ask, for example, they will ask the SoftBank, say, there will be extra charge, extra cost. What can you do? You know, and they talk. The government cannot talk in that way because the government don't know the financial status and the expense issues. And they don't know, they don't get the extra income. And such as I just talking about that is the same thing. If they heard from the SoftBank say, you don't need the NAT in the IPv6, they trust them. If the government told them, they don't trust. Even APrIGF told them, you don't need the NAT in there for the IPv6, they don't believe you because you are not an operator. You're not in my business. So I will say how we can make the IPv6 really successful in Asia. Bring more successful story like a SoftBank, something like that. And of course, those of the data showing, at least right now in Asia, in the IPv6, we are not as good as in Europe. So that is something we can share with them. But remember, share the good example in their industry, not from the outsider. Because the outsider, you don't know the financial structure and operation issue inside the telco. The SoftBank just say one of the story. Because they are a mobile company. They don't have an ADSL. Or might be small, you know. Because if you want to change the ADSL to the IPv6, you need to change the box. Changing the box is money, again, you know. So I would suggest we are going to doing that, sharing the information from APrIGF, from everywhere, from Akamai, from Google, because all the telco or ISP, they need to work with Google. And share the successful story from T-Mobile, SoftBank, Verizon. And I think those telco will be listened, and they will move faster. They will move faster, you know. And of course, the government can play a neutral, you know, the platform to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, just two supporting comments for on what Kuwei said. We always heard that there is no business case for the service provider to deploy IPv6. Well, you have a business case now, right? So rather than investing in CGN or big NAT box and use the legacy IPv4, rather than just use IPv6, it's a very good business case. The cost of IPv4 is $12 per IP. It doesn't make any sense. And it makes sense for a telecom operator. Because as Kuwei said again, if you want to change the wired broadband subscriber, you have to change the box. It's still very expensive. So let's try from where you can do at the moment, right now. And the second supporting comment I would give is LinkedIn, 2 weeks back, published their report from US that their the mobile traffic in US hitting the LinkedIn has crossed 50%, and that is IPv6 only. So it's a big difference, and just because of AT&T. And one operator has changed the statistics for a country. Again, I would say India. One operator, again telecom. It's easier for them to take this step forward, and we can learn from the telecom operator in this region and hear the story that, well, it's not that difficult. And it makes sense in terms of economics now. So yeah, that's supporting comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you for your presentations. I am Adil from Pakistan. Izumi, you mentioned somewhere about the IXPs. Correct me if I am wrong. The main purpose of IXP is to keep the traffic local and reduce the latency. So how exactly establishing more data centers and IXP are going to help IPv6 when my ISP or in my country, in my government are not supporting IPv6 in the first place?
So I think you have both has to support it. So I'm not saying that ISPs don't need to support IPv6. So this is of course needed, but also for the internet exchange points to support IPv6 as well as data center, not just ISP. So that's my major point. I'm not saying that ISPs don't need to support IPv6. Would that clarify your question?
Hello, I'm Leonid Turov. I'm from Russia, and I have a very kind of special question. We always discuss these and other issues basing on the assumption that governments, like businesses, are driven by some rational expectations and considerations of maximizing benefit for the community and the nation. Yet, just to give you an example of some kind of controversial trend, it was just recently that RIPE NCC signed a memorandum of understanding with the Russian government on the issue of IP addresses allocation. And the very next day after that memorandum, the Russian government put forward a very strong statement that the IP allocation, the matters pertaining to IP allocation, IP addresses allocation, should be an exclusive mandate of the government and should be decided within the country and by the government of a given country. I think that that was quite a strong signal, which of course would be accepted throughout a huge post-Soviet space, and most governments in that area would follow that example and that lead. And another point about exchange points, the Russian government also made a strong statement that all exchange points should be, of course, located in the country and should be owned by the government. So in other words, my question is, when we talk about all those market incentives and about some best examples, might be probably lost on some governments and some big players in certain countries, because either they are government owned or they have to obey to certain rules. So what are you going to do with that, and how would you be convincing or trying to engage in a meaningful dialogue with, I mean, under such unconducive circumstances? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Leonard, for pointing out a very important thing. That I would really appreciate RIPE NCC's initiative to support governments for the deployment of IPv6. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I'm still quite skeptical about it, and because it's the same thing what IPv6 task force were trying to do.
Sorry, just a minor correction. The memorandum of understanding held that RIPE NCC is responsible for IP addresses allocation, and the Russian government recognized that. On the very next day, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the correction. I didn't get your point initially. Well, it's as my skepticism still remains as it is. Can't change it, but it's tricky. I'm not sure how it's going to work in Asia specifically, and will probably APrIGF can respond to that if they are trying to do something similar, and which may or may not encourage.
I'm thinking about it. I don't have a right answer. Sorry, I'm Sunny from APrIGF. I just like to cover 3 points that the previous speakers raised, and the presentations as well. So my daily job at APrIGF, and is to go around the region and talk to the operators, the government, the regulators, in making sure they understand what is IPv6, creating awareness, and talking about deployments, right? So we are in a diverse region here. In some economies, yes, the operators are taking initiatives on their own without any support from the government that we can see, and it's been visible. But in some economies, when I talk to the operators and they say, oh, the government is not asking us to do anything, why should we do it? Okay, so it's a balance. I think it's a partnership. You need to, in some economies, you need that partnership to work with the governments, and maybe the government should take the lead. But in some others, don't. The other point I'd like to raise here is, when we started about this IPv6, discussing about IPv6, the deployments, creating awareness, we've been focusing on the content. The content is not on IPv6, so we had the IPv6 launch day, we got the Google, everyone on now. But the bottom line is the CPE, the users are using, right? And that's why now we're discussing about Reliance success, but the Reliance success is not about deploying IPv6 in their network. The Reliance success is actually making those devices available to their subscribers, hundreds and thousands of subscribers. And that's why you see the reliance going up because of those CPEs. And I think that's where we still have to focus our interest in talking to the vendors, in talking to the operators, how you can actually change those CPEs so they can support IPv6, right? And my third point is, I think we still have to go after economies where there is low IPv6 deployment, create awareness among the regulators, governments, and operators, and try to bring them onto one table to discuss the issues, discuss the whatever they require support from the governments, to make it happen. Thank you.
Well, reaching out to the, it means reaching out to the whole Asia-Pacific region, because the deployment is really abysmal. So yeah, we have to make extra efforts now. Please go ahead.
Jian Kangyao from CNIC. In 1995, the IETF RFC for IPv6 was published. So now we already have more than 20 years. So that means IPv6 has been in deployment of more than 20 years, but now still very, very low. I don't know whether next 20 years is IPv6 is be deployed. You also mentioned that government should do this, our businessmen should do this, company should do this, users should do this. So I think from government view, I think a lot of the government have to do a lot of things. For example, in China, we have to devote a lot of money to upgrade our infrastructure to support IPv6. Or Russia, Korea, USA government. I think a lot of government already, but the user don't support it. For example, I'm a company, so I will build a website. So a website to if I choose IPv6, maybe only 30 users can visit my website. We lose 70% users. That means I will lose 70 revenue of money revenue. So I'm a businessman. So I should choose IPv6 or IPv4. So I choose IPv6. I'm a loser. So my company will fail. So could you give me a reason why should I deploy IPv6? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please go ahead.
May I briefly, respond to the earlier comments made so far? Very good question about the content. It's exactly the issue that the most strong challenge that we are facing now is making content available in IPv6. And what is the incentive for that? I recently also experienced a case in Japan where a particular mobile phone operator providing V6 access. Their user had an issue with a game-like application provider. Their users couldn't use this particular game. So we reach out to this game application provider. Hey, people causing, having issues accessing your website with IPv6, but they didn't care. It was exactly for the reason which was highlighted. I mean, yeah, majority of the users are still using IPv4, so I mean, even if some users can't access by IPv6, it wasn't their business. But at the same time, I think, we're starting to see the figures that, especially in mobile, if you don't support IPv6, you will start losing a substantial number of the people who will be accessing your website. And I think this is an area that we've not been able to really reach out to those content providers or other higher layer players in the industry. And I think talking to operators at network operators groups or at RIR meetings, very helpful. So I think I really agree with Kowei that sharing these business cases in these communities are important. But at the same time, there are still groups of people who are not able to reach out by simply going to these operators groups or RIR meetings. And this is something that I think needs more like a comprehensive strategy rather than leaving things on the efforts of individual private companies. And this may be an area I'm not just pushing for government. Maybe in certain cases, maybe like a community, like joint community group or something. I mean, so we don't really need to stick to government only, but a joint effort on more like a broader basis is, I think, important. I think the point that Sunny mentioned about CPE, that's also another area. And in some cases, maybe governments at least sharing information to end users might be helpful. And then in other economies, maybe it's not, government is not the right place, and maybe, I don't know, maybe consumer protection group or something like that. So this needs to be identified per economies, but I think that my point is that there are certain things that needs to be done on more integrated basis rather than just leaving everything to the motivation of private sector.
Sunny again from APrIGF. So on the content side, I think we need to differentiate between the global content and the local content, right? The global content, I think these the very famous ones are the YouTubes, the Facebooks, they're all there. But the local content will be a challenge. Will be a big challenge actually to get those guys to put the content on IPv6. In regards to the CPEs, every economy, or at least the regulators that I spoke to in economies, every piece of equipment that comes into the country has to pass through a certification, and that is with the government. Okay, if they put a guideline saying every device that comes into every piece of equipment that comes into the country must have a tick for IPv6, then that stops at least 80% of the devices coming into the country. I mean, some devices still come through the back doors, from wherever they can. But at least they can make an effort in that first stage, okay, this must meet, and whoever is buying that equipment must pass that certification. I think that will help with the changeover of CPEs over time. Thank you.
I will be try to very short. Forget about talking about the previous stuff. I try to talk about what is a potential risk for the IPv6 in the futures. And I don't know anybody of you thinking about that. I know some of the country want to use in the IPv6 as e-identifier. That would be very interesting though, thinking about it. If a government put a particular IPv6 address number to every citizen, then that would be interesting.
Well, the sky is the limit, right? Go ahead.
Adil from Pakistan once again. So my question is to all the speakers. Recently, IETF released RFC 8200, the latest technical specification standard on IPv6. So if anybody of you would like to comment on what has been changed from the previous RFC, especially in terms of security and another perspective of general. What are the changes that or new things that are introduced in new RFC that were not before?
Well, I will take this one, and I would say I would like to do some self-promotion that I wrote a blog post on Deploy 360. Go read that one. Nothing has changed. It's just an amalgamation of 9 different RFCs, which was published to define the IPv6 specification in last 19-20 years, and 2 erratas, which was just to update the initial RFC, which was published in 1998. So nothing has changed. So this is what I mentioned in the my blog post as well. Well, not my blog post, it's Internet Society's blog post. It's pretty clear that nothing has changed, nothing has to worry, nobody has to worry about anything. What they have done is they said, well, it's time. The protocol has matured enough that it should become an internet standard. So IPv6 is an internet standard. There is no proposed standard. So that's how ITF works. Just not getting into details. Nothing has changed. Everything remains as it is. If you have deployed IPv6, ITF has nothing done anything wrong with it. It will remain as it is. So because we are running out of time, we want to conclude this discussion. And what we would like to do is leave this session with some takeaways that what's going to happen now. So I'll start with Izumi if she would like to say something.
Thank you. I think we had quite good discussions on the extent of, the government involvement and other players. And I think it would be really nice if we can start shortlisting what would be the kind of things that would be helpful to be done on a joint effort. It doesn't have to be just government. I think Sunny has listed very interesting example on certification to import products and maybe give it a tick for IPv6 supported products. That's very interesting. A couple of things that's happening in Japan, which was helpful to do it as a joint effort. One is that government has published a list of equipment that is V6 supported in security area so that people can take consideration. So this is a helpful way for information sharing. Third, this is not government. It's a joint community effort that small to medium-sized industries, they don't have the capacity to train their engineers with IPv6 expertise. So we are providing a hands-on workshop to those companies. It's a joint community effort for capacity building of the engineers within Japan. So these are a couple of things that we can do as a joint effort, and I think if anybody from the floor or other speakers can list these things that you think might be helpful, I think it would be really good to do it in the remaining 5 minutes.
Yes. Billy, would you like to say something, just as a closing remark on that?
Oh, yeah. So I said before, I think government shouldn't be the drive IPv6. It should be driven by the private sector. And however, it's in Korea, government should, but there's certain area the government help, like small and medium sized enterprise. They don't have a capacity for the training, IPv6 training. So the government should provide some help for those entities. So I think this is it for my comments.
Thanks, Billy. Koji, would you like to add something?
So, sorry. I want to talk about the two things. So, one of the issue of the CPE. So, actually, we provide. I say we providing the IPv6 for the smartphone users, but actually, we are providing for the some of the smartphone user because who has changed the handset, because it's the same problem. So if we provide the IPv6, all smartphone users, we need to change the handset, everything. It's impossible for us, actually. So, but fortunately, the mobile phone industry, as you know, so everyone they change the handset and every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's a short term than the fixed lines. So we guess that almost the users changed within 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So anyway, so we need to change the customer's premises, customer's equipment. So, but this is the issue. But we think so. We have to launch first because we need time to complete the migration to the IPv6. So we need to launch ASAP I think, we think. And so, totally, another one thing I would like to address about the global IP addresses risk and the NAT. Sorry. This is my opinion, but global IP is justice, I think, because NAT is have the function of the address translation. I think the address is the most important things in the internet, because if you communicate with another things, you use the address. It's like your mouse and your house's address is like a very important as your equipment. So, but we provide using the NAT, meaning your address is changed by another things. So you cannot control about the addresses. This is even the important things, important issues, I think. So global address is very, very important for the freedom and the justice and say something, freedom. So we need to try to get the global address. We need to provide for the global, for the everyone global IP address. I think this is good because no one joined your communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Koji, for that. We are running out of time, so just quickly wrap up some recommendation from my end as well. And I would recommend it to the APrIGF board and the organizing committee that it should be mandated as part of their checklist for the host that they will provide IPv6 connectivity to the participants. So the people coming in here and the regulators and the government and the other advisory bodies coming here, they'll figure it out and well, it works. It's just IPv6. It's just you never ask for IPv4 when you ask for internet. So why you're asking for IPv6? It's just internet and it works. Look at your laptop, your mobile, everything works fine. So this is my recommendation to the APrIGF board and the organizing committee. Mandate it in your checklist. The next time you have an event, the host should provide IPv6. And the second thing is the regulators has the role of facilitator. And us, like Internet Society, APNIC, any other NIR, JPNIC, or any other supporting organization, we have the role of facilitator to those regulators. We have to provide them with the right information. This is the business case. These are the numbers. It makes sense so that they can facilitate within their own country. We can't go to every country and encourage them. So we have to be sure that what we are doing, what we are saying, and hit the nail at the right time with the right force. Well, that's my recommendation, please.
Excellent summary, Aftab, and very good recommendation. So putting on my APrIGF MSG hat, your request noted. I'll take it back to the MSG list. And I also want to highlight that Global IGF, our best practices forum on IPv6, made exactly the same recommendation to the UN. So now UN website is V6 supported, and then we also requested the future IGF should support V6 network. So let's slowly get going. And thank you very much, everyone, for participating. I would like to thank our panelists, Aftab as co-moderator, and all the participants who joined us in the session. Thank you.
What was the success factor?